The Chinese have started to pull back at least 1.5 to 2 kilometers in three pre-identified spots, Gogra, Hotsprings, as well as one other place in the Galwan Valley area. This is being seen as the beginning of a verifiable disengagement or a verifiable de-escalation. That's exactly what India had wanted, remember. And we understand after the third such Corps Commander meet between Lieutenant General Harinder Singh on the Indian side and Major General Liu Lin on the Chinese side, these three areas have been identified. And government sources have told Times Now Srinjoy Chaudhary just earlier today that Chinese trucks have already arrived at those spots and they have started dismantling the paraphernalia the Chinese had erected in those friction spots. Now we understand these trucks are already moving there and dismantling the tents that were visible in certain satellite images that were made public during the course of the last 2 weeks. We are being joined right now by consulting editor Maroof Raza on the program. Thank you, Maroof, for joining us. Now, I have so many questions for you, but I'll just start with one. Verifiable disengagement was what India wanted. We are now seemingly moving towards that direction. It's going to be a long, drawn-out sort of a de-escalation. But how do you view the beginning of it, where Gogra, Hotsprings and one more spot, PP14, has been identified, where the Chinese have at least visibly starting dismantling the paraphernalia and the infrastructure?
See, on the face of it, Atar, it seems like good news. But going with past experience, I'd like to highlight a few points. The first is that the Chinese tend to go beyond their claim line in their pushback into what we accept as their claim line. Look how things evolved between 1960 and 1962. And so therefore, whether they will eventually go back to what we regard as a claim line is for me $1 million question. The second aspect is the Chinese need a face saver. And the face saver to their army and their public is that we came in for exercises there. India interrupted our exercise and led to scuffles. And therefore, we are going back to the positions we came in from. But most importantly, China, to my mind, will only withdraw up to those locations that have defensive potential. So what happens in such terrain that you don't occupy, as in the case of LAC or in the case of LOC with Pakistan, you don't occupy every inch of territory that is marked out on your map. You occupy those areas within half to 1 or maybe 2 kilometers where you have defensive potential, but you can dominate the area with patrolling and fire. So I'm not very familiar with the lay of the ground there. My guess is that they are going to probably go back, as some people have often said, take 2 steps forward, take 1 step back, till there is a certain claim they have made and established and controlled. But at the same time, they're going to go back to locations which they can defend in the event of a border skirmish between India and China. As yet, of course, there are other tools in India's hand. So I wouldn't say that we are looking at that, but the possibility remains of India getting frustrated with China not doing enough and then pushing for it with military power, because now that the Prime Minister has gone to Ladakh and force build-up has taken place, it will seem a bit odd that India accepts the dotted line the Chinese give out to us. Please remember.
That's interesting, Maroof, that you say that. And I'm taking that logic forward. The fact that this is just being identified at 3 friction spots, Gogra, Hotsprings, as well as one more, PP14, I believe. Now, government sources are telling Times Now that this could be a template which could be replicated if all goes well and according to what India wants as far as diplomatic and military pushes are concerned. It could be replicated in other areas which understandably and undeniably are going to be far more difficult than the Galwan area, namely Pangong So, where the Chinese are entrenched. They have the heights there, as well as Depsang, which is a plain, but also Chinese intrusion is not new there. Now, do you think the hope that this will be a template that could be replicated is perhaps being slightly, let's call it presumptuous and perhaps not so easy?
You see, everywhere you move in those areas, with every few kilometers, the lay of the ground changes pretty dramatically. In any pictures you see of that area, I've been to Ladakh a number of times. You know what? Can you believe that until General Sundarji put the theory across and actually had mechanized forces move there to Ladakh, we only saw it as an infantryman's terrain. But now you have an armored brigade plus out there, which means there are open stretches where you can do mechanized maneuvers because they need space to maneuver. So terrain differs. The second thing is that you tend to take in whatever is easy to absorb as your first step, till hoping like hell public attention deflects from there, and you can go about the tedious process of making claims and counterclaims over areas which are hard to disengage in. And third and most important to me, the two areas which are equally, if not more important than Galwan Plain and the Galwan River Valley, is the Depsang Plain, because that's where they come in pretty rapidly, and that's what gives them control over areas leading towards the northward Karakoram Pass, which is one of their long-term aims, and the Pangyeongsu's northern bank and even the eastern bank, because Pangyeongsu, please remember.
Right. Stay with us, Maroof. We're also getting back Major General G.D. Bakshi on the program. Before I go to Major General Bakshi, I just quickly want to touch base with Srinjoy Chaudhary, our National Affairs Editor, who's joining us and has been getting us inputs on this. Now, as Maroof was saying, Srinjoy, that this is just the beginning, and, we shouldn't really trust the Chinese because their old strategy of taking two steps forward, then one step backward, so that they get some wiggle room at the bargaining table is nothing new. But how is the Indian side now looking at it? Are they happy that there is just a foot in the door right now, so that, as Maroof said, public attention could be slightly then deflected, where we can get down on the front line to the more serious business of actual claims and counterclaims? Is that the strategy we went into it in the first place?
Well, the Indian point is very clear. It has been clear for a while that Galwan has to be sorted out first. So if Galwan has to be sorted out, there are 2 or 3 things that had to happen. Number one, the Chinese had to go back a certain distance, and well beyond, from our top sources in the government, well beyond the zone of contention. The zone of contention in this case is the line of actual control according to India's perception. So there is the expectation today that when the Chinese get onto their trucks, when they dismantle their tents, and that process is happening right now, they will go beyond, well beyond is the word that was told to me on Saturday. In fact, this is when Times Now broke the story, that this would be well beyond the Indian perception of the line of actual control in the Galwan area. And the same could happen in the Hot Springs area and the Gogra area. Now that this dismantling is happening, we will have to see what actually happens, whether they go back as far as back as beyond the line of actual control, according to the Indian perception.
Right.
Then, as you rightly said, we will look at the other 2 areas. The template, will the Galwan template work in Pangong? Will the Galwan template work in Depsang? We do not know. And if it does, we do not know how long it will take. There is no dispute in the statement that this could take weeks, that this could take months. But this template will at least be tried out in the other 2 areas.
All right, fair enough.
Is what we are here.
Making that very clear on how the Indian side is approaching this particular situation, where verifiable disengagement has just about started in those 3 friction areas or contentious zones, as they've been called. General Bakshi is also with us. General Bakshi, quickly, I'd like to pick your brains on what you think is happening right now. We understand this is just the beginning. This template could be, may or may not be replicated in Depsang as well as in the Pangong So area. But what we understand is, what is clear from sources, as Srinjoy is telling us, that trucks have arrived in those friction spots, and this was already pre-agreed between the 2 sides in the last Corps Commander meeting. Do you think this is going according to plan, or is it too early to say?
When the first Corps Commanders meeting was held on the 6th of June, I'm given to understand that the undertaking by the Chinese was that they would disengage, they would go back about 2.5 kilometers, and about 1.5 kilometers we would step back onto our own side. This is what was being said. But we all know what happened 10 days later on 15, 16 June, which quite incidentally was the birthday of China's paramount leader Xi Jinping. And we all know that a very murderous clash took place on that night in which we lost one colonel and 20 jawans. The Chinese are said to have lost 46, but they have not as yet conceded those casualties or honored their people in any way publicly. So I would say that it will be extremely difficult for us to trust now. We will have to trust, but we will have to verify with a capital V. It's not what the Chinese say, but it is more what they do on the ground that we will have to look at. Commercial satellite imagery is available to the whole world now. It's being very extensively used in this crisis, and we will know what has really happened. And even if the disengagement has taken place from the point of violent clash in Galwan, as Maroof and my other friends have brought out very clearly, that still leaves the concentrations opposite Depsang, Daulat Bey, Goldi, and the threat to our line of communication remains. Even if the Chinese are 2 kilometers back, if it is a mechanized infantry brigade of the 6th Mechanized Division that had come in there and the 4th Highland Motorized Rifle Division, the problem is caused by these two offensive formations coming all the way from Xinjiang and deploying themselves opposite our road axis. So till they completely disengage,
all
go
valid
back
points,
to
General. All valid points, and I'm pretty sure Maroof will agree that all of us here agree on the panel, along with Shinjoy as well, that what China does is far more important than what China says. So I would assume that this is the time now, then, Maroof, and correct me if you think I'm wrong. This is the time to double down on not just our intelligence paraphernalia, but also the fact that just because the Chinese agreed to move 1.5 to 2 kilometers backwards, unless they actually do that, don't trust anything that happens, not even your eyes for that matter, because we've seen what happened in Galwan, as rightly pointed out by Giri Bakshi here.
See, Athar, China is going to continue to dig its heels in unless you can extract concessions from them based on your ability to leverage your other national strengths. One is your trade and engagements with China. If you continue to bring it down, China will feel the economic pinch, and I believe a figure of $10 to $12 billion annually could be felt by China with effect for the measures that have been taken. So wars are fought not just to win a post and a picket here and there. They are fought, conflicts are fought to either extend a political aim through military means, or you use political, economic, and diplomatic aims and means to achieve something on the ground. So we have to not let up on our other efforts. There is the maritime angle, which is often not discussed. But believe me, if you can start making it difficult for them in the Straits of Malacca and the Bay of Bengal region, China would then, you win some there, they win some here, they lose some there. So they have to make concessions. And General Bakshi himself has earlier written about what you call the revolving door strategy, which means you should be prepared to make some ingress into contestable territories across the McMahon line in the Arunachal to tell them, listen, we have our strength there. We can take up some territory, so you better give in here. But the most important thing is two things. One is weather is going to fold up in another 3 months. So you have to achieve what you have to achieve before weather gets out of hand. Two, technology. We keep talking about surveillance technology. This was brought up in the Kargil Review Committee report, but we made the same intelligence blunders that we made earlier. So how are we now going to enhance our ability as we keep talking
So
of
a lot of work
verify?
to be done clearly. So this is not any moment to chest thump and say that we won a major victory or whatever, because the work is just starting. The Chinese have a very interesting saying, may you live in interesting times. I have a feeling we are entering some very, very interesting times starting just now.